The Rambam Halacha Daled just continues from the previous Rambam. The Rambam says that Bizman Hazeh She'ein Beis Hamikdash Kayom. Today that we no longer have the Beis Hamikdash and we're not able to bring korbanos. Ein Lono El Teshuva is the Mizbech Kapora. Teshuva is the equivalent of the Mizbeach, which is Kapora. It's the Rambam in Halchos Gimel. And then he concluded that Atzma Shoyim Kippur Mechapel L'Shavim Shneim B'Yom Hazeh Yichapel Aleichem. That's how we conclude Halacha Gimel. And the essence of the day of Yom Kippur innately has the ability to Mimchaper. As the Pasuk says, Ki Yom Hazeh Yichaper Aleichem. It seems to be Teshuva is a Mechaper and Yom Kippur is a Mechaper. However, Yom Kippur is not Mechaper without Teshuva. Meaning jointly, they bring about reinstatement. Now what the Rambam is going to say, is it full reinstatement? Is it partial reinstatement? What does it do? So now the Rambam explains, Abi shat Teshuva mechaperes ala kol. Teshuva atones for everything. Meaning it minimizes the degree of the past transgression. That's kapora. I explained, the Gemara tells us in Zvachim, the reason why kapora is kapora atonement is kapora, because the Gemara tells us that the Kohen, after he would sprinkle the blood of the chatos, he had blood on his finger. So he would have a golden vessel and he'd run his finger over the edge of that vessel to cleanse his finger. They're called Kippurei Zov. That's what those vessels are called, Kippurei Zov, because it cleanses his finger. It wipes the finger clean. Identically, kapora means it wipes the slate clean. The question is, to what degree does it clean the slate, the record? So we say Teshuva is mechaperes, Atzma Shoyim Kippur is mechaper. They contribute to cleaning the slate, cleaning the record. Okay. Yesh aveiro shemiskaprim l'shaton. There's certain aveiros which the kapora takes place at the moment. The Rambam will explain this. Yesh aveiro shemiskaprim el lachazman. Other aveiros, the kapora only takes place later. Now the question is, when it takes place later, until that moment later, does nothing happen? Well, no, it's to some degree, but what he says takes place later means total kapara, which means, is it like two halves make a whole, but a half without the other half means nothing? The same thing. If we'll see, a mitzvah say kapara in its own right fully reinstates the person. But let's say it's a lav, as the Rambam will explain in a moment. A lo saseh, person eats non-kosher. Person wears shatnez. Lo saseh, then it's what? It's tshuva and Yom Kippurim. So you did tshuva, you had remorse, you committed not to do it again. Now Yom Kippur is mechaper. You need Yom Kippur. What does that mean? Is it now that you have Yom Kippur, what you had done earlier, it allows you to have a kapara, or that contributes to the kapara? It's a combination of both. Because we're saying Teshuva is mechaper and Yom Kippur is mechaper. It seems to be that only when Yom Kippur comes, then the initial charot and kabbalah have value in conjunction with Yom Kippur. Now, jointly, it reinstates the person. That seems to be the connotation of what's going here. Ketzad. Over aver al mitzvah say shebo koris. Bosa tshuva. Person violated the mitzvah say, which does not carry the liability of koris, and he did tshuva. Didn't eat matzah at the seder. Didn't take the daled meaning. Wore a four-cornered garment without tzitzis. Okay? Didn't say kriyish bisman in its time. And izaz misham ad shemochelo. He remains in his place. It's the words of the Gemara, until he's fully forgiven. Mechila. Ubeilu nemar shuvu bonim shovovim erpa b'shuvosechem. Return, errant children, I will heal you through your return. So it seems to be when you return, you're healed. that's just on the tshuva, independent of anything else, you already have the refuah. We make a mishabet, we say refuah sanef, refuah saguf. You see from the pasuk that when you do tshuva, it's a refuah. It's a refuah, that's a refuah sanefesh. You're healing the soul. Meaning whatever deficiency you brought about through the Aveiro, the tshuva is a refuah. It's a healing. Avra mitzvahs lo saseh, she'ein bo kores, v'lo mises bezdin, v'osa tshuva, non-kosher, shotness. That's lo saseh she'ein bo kores. Chometz b'Pesach. He was in possession of chometz. It's lo saseh. Tshuva toler v'yom kippurim mechaper. Tshuva holds it in abeyance. It hangs. Yom Kippur mechaper. Now, when it says Yom Kippur mechaper, we just said before, Tshuva is mechaper alakol. Tshuva atones for everything. Doesn't mean it's a prerequisite, but it doesn't bring the reinstatement. Or as I said, no. It contributes to the kapora of Yom Kippur. Tshuva toilev Yom Kippur mechaper ubeil nemer ki b'yom hazeh yichaper aleichem. On that day you will have kapora. We could still learn the tshuva is mechaper, except on that day you will have kapora in conjunction with the original tshuva. Jointly it brings kapora, but until then it doesn't do anything. All it does, it holds it in abeyance. Now the question is, what happens if the person dies before Yom Kippur? He does tshuva on a lo saseh, and he never makes it tshuva. So tshuva is tola. So how does he have kapara? Right? We're going to see later if a person violated Chil Hashem. Over there, we can see in a moment, he has tshuva, he has Yom Kippur, he has Yisurim. Until he dies, it's not complete. So death, the actual dying, the neshama departing from the body, that itself brings about the ultimate kapara. That even Chil Hashem, that a person, he cannot be fully reinstated during his lifetime until he has that passing, the neshama detached from the body. So evidently, if he does tshuva, even if he doesn't make the Yom Kippur, death is the ultimate level of kapara. So he will be fully reinstated before he dies, as long as he dies in a state of tshuva, as the Rambam will say regarding Chil Hashem. He has to pass away in the state of tshuva. Overall, krisus and he says bezdin, vosa tshuva. He violated something carries koris or mises bezdin, and he did tshuva. Tshuva Yom Kippurim tolin. Tshuva Yom Kippur, hold it in abeyance. Now he says something interesting. So it seems to, what is in abeyance? Seems to be, it, like we said before, it does nothing. Tolin. But we see from here that's not the meaning of the word tolin. Because it says, V'yisurin habonov gomrim es hakapora. So here it seems to be, it's gomrim. The Ram doesn't say before, when you did tshuva on a lo saseh, Yom Kippur is gomrim es hakapora. It doesn't say that. It completes the kapora. From there, it seems to be that it's only jointly with Yom Kippur, you have kapora. Until thou, Yom Kippur is not gomer. It doesn't complete. It holds it in abeyance, but it's not gomer. The kapora did not start. There, as he said, you need, at best, you need both together to bring kapora. Here we're saying, if it carries koris mises bezdin, we say tolin, and what does Yisurin do? Then gomrin, it completes the kapora. That means you have kapora until then, but you don't have full kapora until you have the Yisurim. That's the connotation of the Rambam, the way the Rambam is presenting it. Kapora gemura. He says again, he reiterates it, and don't consider it for a moment. He does not have full kapora. All of Yisurim. He has to have Yisurim. Again, to have full. Until then, he has partial kapora. But kapora gemura, absolute kapora, he doesn't have till Yisurim come upon him. I will acknowledge them with the rod of the pesha and the goyim as a result of their avero. So let's stop for a moment. Where does the Rambam get? Seems to be, as I said, Yom Kippur and Teshuva. It's not Yom Kippur is Gomer's kapara. Jointly, it brings kapara. When we speak about Koris Mrs. Bezdin, we say Teshuva and Yom Kippur Ktoler. They hold it in abeyance, and he uses the language Gomer is kapara. That means until then you have kapara, but it's not a kapara gemura, as he says. Elo kapara gemura. He doesn't have the absolute kapara until he has Yisurim. How does he know this? Because it seems to be, before it says, by Yom Kippur it says, Ki b'yom hazeh yichaper aleichem. Right? Yom Kippur is the mechaper. The connotation yichaper does mean gomer is a kapara. Yom Kippur in its own right is mechaper. So in conjunction with the tshuva, it's mechaper. Here, the pasuk the Rambam quotes, Ufakarti b'shevet pisham u'b'degoyim avonam. You'll be remembered or considered through the rod of your pesha and the negoim for your deliberate sin. It seems to be until then you have kapara, but it's not kapara gemura. It's not an absolute kapara until you suffer some level of yisurim. The medvorim amurim. All this that we're saying is that all these together bring kapara gemura. V'shlo chiles Hashem. V'shosh over, when he transgressed, he wasn't Mechal Hashem. Wasn't Chil Hashem. Ava Mechalel is Hashem. Api Shosa Tshuva. Although he did Tshuva. V'gi Yom HaKippurim. And he experienced the Yom Kippur in the state of that Tshuva. V'omi b'Tshuvoso. And he's still retaining that Tshuva state. Uvol of Yisurim. And Yisurim came upon him. And miskapel kapor gemur achiomos. Again, he does not have kapor gemura. Similar as we said before with Yisurim. He does not have absolute kapora until he dies. The actual departing of the neshama from the body, that level, whatever that is, it's a level of Yisurim, and he's still in the state of tshuva until he dies. Elo, the Ram reiterates it. Tshuva of Yom Kippurim, Yisurim Shloshtan Tolin. So again, what does Tolin mean? Tolin doesn't mean, like we said before, that it doesn't bring kapora. Tolin means you could have kapora. But we said it's not kapora gemura. You're not fully reinstated. Umisa mechaperes, shenema v'nigle be'oznei Hashem tzvodois, im yichupa oven hazel lochem atimusun. The sin is not atoned on your behalf until you die. Okay? But again, using the same language, and with capital kapora gemura. You don't have that absolute, complete kapora. There's a word from Yisrael Salanter. Now, if a person does tshuva, he experiences Yom Kippur, and he has Yisurim, if it's Chil Hashem, he's not fully atoned until he dies, as the Ram quotes the pasuk. What does that mean? That means there's not enough suffering in life, in this existence, that could fully reinstate a person. You say a person should be able to reach a certain level of Yisurim that he meets the grade. It seems to be no matter, Chil Hashem is so extreme that as much pain and suffering you have in this existence, it's not enough to rectify, to reinstate the person for Chil Hashem. Because the Rambam says you have to die. He should say, Yisurim, it's that special level of Yisurim. Ram, based on the pasuk, no, Tumusun. The actual conclusion of the person's life, the neshama departing from the body, whatever that is, that's Gomer Sakabura. That's what? And Elo Kapar Achi Omus. So he says, we know that Midah Tova is Meruba Midas Paranus, the Mishnah says. When Hashem rewards, it's greater than what he punishes. 500 times more. It's a Mishnah and Sota. So if the Rabbi Yishol says, if a person is Chil Hashem, we're always worried, and Rabbi Chal speaks about this. A person Chas Sholem could actually deplete the Keren, the principle of mitzvahs in this world. Person, although we say person's stipend is set in place, but a person's able to deplete his what? His principle. That initially you had more, and because of the way you lived, what Hashem gave you in this world, you minimize your principle, and you never know. So Rishon always says, so what do? How do you guarantee your base? Whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you in this world, reinvest. That's Rabbi Yishol. Just keep reinvesting it. You receive something, utilize it, l'shem shamayim. Do it for the sake of Hashem. As a result of that, it's reinvested. It's never for yourself. So as a result of that, you always guarantee your principle. It's intact. But he says, but you never know. The Ramchal speaks in the Derech Hashem that a person, based on your accomplishments in the world come, you could be considered a Rosh, you could be a leader. But because of the way you were dealt within this world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you part of that principle, you're no longer a Rosh. You're no longer a leader in the Olam Haba. You could have been a Rosh, but because of the way you chose to live your life, you minimized the Keren, the principle. So Reb Shol says, so how do you guarantee that it should not be minimized? Because you never know, Chas v'Sholom, just keep reinvesting. Whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you, utilize it to Shem Shemayim. That's Rabbi Shol, but he says more. But what happens if a person doesn't live his life that way? You never know, Chas v'Sholom. Person could deplete everything he has. He says the way to do it is do Kiddush Hashem. Because he says, you see from Yisurim that as much as you suffer in this lifetime, there's not enough pain in the physical lifetime that a person could be atoned for an Aveiro. So if you do Kiddush Hashem and it's Midah Tov and Rub Midas Paronos 500 times, that means there's not enough good that a Kodesh Baruch will give you in this life that can compensate you for the Kiddush Hashem. As a result of that, you guaranteed your share in the Olam Haba. Even if Chas v'Sholom, a person should deplete or minimize his Keren, his principle, you guaranteed you have a share in the world to come because you did Kiddush Hashem during your lifetime. That's a famous word from Yisrael Salanter. Gamzu was the Rebbe of Rabbi Akiva. And he's the one who said always everything was Gamzu Tovo. He loaded up his pack of animals with food and delicacies. He's going to his father-in-law for the Regolim. And as he stops at an inn, a man comes over to him and says, he wants something to eat. And he says, just wait a moment. I just want to take something off my pack animal. Turns around, the person died. The person expired because he didn't immediately give him the food to eat. So the moment that happens, Nochem Shem Gamzu says, he felt that he was liable for the man's death because if he would have attended to his need immediately, maybe he wouldn't have died. That's what he felt. So he said, the eyes of this person can no longer see. My eyes should no longer be able to see. The hands of this person who can no longer have feeling. His hands should not have feeling. The feet that can no longer walk should no longer be able to walk. And the body, and he says his body should be covered with boils. Okay? And immediately, Tzaddik goes to Kodesh Baruch Hu Makayim. Nochem Shamzu went into a state of paralysis. He was blind, and his body was covered with boils. So Mara tells over a story in Tainis. He was lying in a bed in this state, and it was a hovel, and the house was about to collapse. His Talmidim come into the room, and the bed, he's lying in bed, and the legs of the bed are in pails of water. Why they're in pails of water? Because since he has boils, the boils are oozing all kinds of fluids, so the insects would climb up the legs of the bed, and they would attach themselves to the wounds. So by having the legs of the bed in pails of water, if they would climb up, they'd fall into the water and they wouldn't be able to attach themselves. So he says to his Talmidim, before you take me out of the house, because it's going to collapse, make sure to take all my possessions out. Because if you take me out first, the house collapse, all my possessions will be destroyed. So first empty the house, and then after you take me out, guaranteed the house will not collapse. And that's what they did. They first took everything out, then they took him out, it collapsed. But before that happened, his Talmidim, they saw the way he was suffering. He was blind, he was paralyzed, and he had these boils all over his body. They such a pitiful state, they were pained. And they said to their Rebbe, woe to us that we see you in such a state. That's what they say to Nachum Gamzu. So he says to them, woe to me if you would not see me in such a state. You understand? Nachum Gamzu was known as the miracle worker. Whenever Klal Yisrael had a mission, they would send Nachum Gamzu, because the Gemara says he was a Mlumed Benisim. He was adept. Hashem performed miracles for him. Therefore, he was the man. And this man, such a tzaddik, and he says, woe to me if I wouldn't be suffering this way. Is he so terrible? What's it all about? There's a famous word from the Shalah Kodesh that the Gemara tells us that when Moshe Rabbeinu was Olam Morom, HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem was putting crowns on the letters. They're called Tagim. And Moshe Rabbeinu didn't understand what it was. So Hashem says to Moshe, says that what is it all about? He says, in future generations, there's going to be a person. His name is Rabbi Akiva, and he's going to be Dorish Tili Halachas from these Tagim. Mounds and mounds of Halachas, he'll be able to extrapolate from these crowns, on these letters. So Moshe says to him, Maschoro, what's his reward? So Hashem says, take a back seat, I'm going to show you. And he shows how the Romans of the Sarkim Barzel, the way they're scathing off the flesh of his body with iron knives, iron combs. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, Zed Torah v'zuschora. He's so great. That's the schar. That's the reward for Torah. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Kach ola b'machshov b'tchila. Kach ola, that was my original intent. What does that mean? So the Shalah Kodesh explains, initially, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to create the world with Midas Adin. As it says, Bereshis bo Elokim, Vayomer Elokim. And Rashi cites the Chazal, but the world couldn't have survived it, the Midas Adin. So it says, Shitif ima Midas HaRachmim. He coalesced the Midas HaRachmim. Otherwise, the world couldn't survive. But what about for those special tzaddikim? The special tzaddikim, the way to go was Midas Adin. So what Reb Kiva was experiencing at the end of his life, that was the Midas Adin. Because that person being at that level, he's able to tolerate the Midas Adin. That's how the Shalah Kodesh explains the Gemara in the Menachos. We don't know why. When a person dies, and he dies, suffers tremendously. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows why a person experiences what he experiences. We have Tzadik V'Ralo, Tzadik V'Tovlo. What is it all about? Moshe Rabbeinu asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what's it all about? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Gemara says in Baruch Hashem did not answer on that. So the Ramchal explains, it doesn't mean to say conceptually we understand. Why is Tzadik V'Ralo? Nobody's perfect. So if that's the case, it's understood Tzadik V'Ralo. What's Tzadik V'Tovlo? The question, what is a greater question? Tzadik V'Ralo, Tzadik V'Tovlo? The greater question, Tzadik V'Tovlo, not Tzadik V'Ralo. Tzadik V'Ralo, nobody's perfect. So you need atonement. But Tzadik V'Tovlo, you mean to say he's so perfect he doesn't need kapara, doesn't need atonement? The answer is very simple, that every Jew has a mission in life. If the person has a mission, that he has to have good health, because he has to be involved 24 hours a day. He has to have a charisma. He has to have a status. He has to be recognized by the community as somebody special. And he needs all these amenities to be able to succeed in his mission as that Kiddush Hashem. Hashem provides that. It has nothing to do, that it's Tovlo has nothing to do, he's being rewarded. Because that itself, that's to accommodate his mission in life. Tzaddik Ralo, he doesn't have that mission. That's not his mission. Therefore, it could be Ralo. That's the concept. But, so what's so difficult to understand? But why is this tzaddik chosen to be Ralo and this tzaddik chosen to be Tovlo? You know what the answer is? Every neshama needs perfection. Has the chief shleimus. There are no two neshamas which are alike. Only God knows what the profile of the neshama is and what that neshama needs to bring about its level of shleimus, its level of perfection. This tzaddik needs Ralo. Despite all the difficulties, he will succeed. That's his mission. And if he does that, despite the Ralo, then he succeeded to bring about shleimus for his neshama. The other tzaddik, no. The way he'll be able to achieve shleimus for his neshama, he has to go out and he has to be an influencer. He has to move mountains. He has to be the one who, that special person. So Hashem has to provide all those things. So the question, conceptually, we understand why each one is that. But why was this one chosen for this and that one chosen for that? The answer is only Hashem knows, because that's the makeup, that's the profile of each individual's neshama. That's the understanding.